Father? Damien's voice trembled as he stared at the beast that had become his father. The boy dropped his guard, his weapon falling to the ground as he reached his hand towards the man in the colorful Batman costume. Memories flashed through his head as he remembered the rain at the funeral, the scent of incense that filled the air at the intimates event. Without realizing it, Damien took a few steps forward, almost touching the reanimated man before him. His body trembled while his arms stretched out, reacting almost unconsciously. His quirk worked to look for something it could use, causing the equipment at the cave to convulse. The closer the boy got to it, the more the creature in front of him convulsed in pain. The pain overwhelmed it just as Damien was about to touch it. Zurinar screeched as it morphed, clawing at Damien. The young assassin instinctively jumped back, evading the blows. As the transformation finished, the man-bat-type creature screamed at Damien. As saliva sprung from its mouth, Damien thought he heard something. "Run!" Before Damien could act on what he thought he heard, the creature flapped its wings. Believing it to be an attack, Damien summoned his staff, but it just flew away. Panicking for the first time since he had started his school life, Damien struggled to summon a tracker, throwing it at the winged creature as it flew away. Luckily, the tracker stuck to its target. Feeling a sense of defeat, Damien let himself fall to the ground, staring at Zurinar as he left, his head swarmed with thoughts. The faint sounds of chainsaws filled his ears, becoming stronger and stronger. He had forgotten where he was and what he was doing. Just as the Nomu brought down its chainsaw at Damien, the boy jumped forward, evading the blow while throwing a battering at the beast. Tch! He let out an annoyance as the projectile exploded in the monster's face. Not too far from Damien's position, Izuku stared down a bulky man wearing a red tank top as the large man stared back. If it weren't for this new obstacle, Izuku would be running behind the fleeing shapeshifter. "Ah, I recognize you. You're one of the kids Shigaraki wants us to kill." Muscular grinned. A wave of killer intent came Izuku's way as the man started growing in size, increasing his muscle mass. Responding in kind, Izuku let his own power flow through his body. "At least entertain me for a while, will ya?" the blonde villain requested as he cracked his neck. The villain made the first move, rushing at Izuku, trying to slam him into the ground, but the young one-for-all user dodged the blow. Slightly annoyed, the villain attacked again, and again, and again, but no matter how much he tried to hit the freckled boy, he would always jump out of the way just in time. "Quit running, you runt!" Muscular shouted at him, his mind overflowing with annoyance at this point. He wanted to fight, and all the boy was doing was dodge. "If you aren't going to fight me, then I'll just go find someone else to beat up," the villain continued as he turned around. Hearing the threat and taking advantage of the opportunity, Izuku rushed at the villain, spinning in the air to gain speed for his attack. Smash! The villain saw it coming and blocked the boy's blow. "Weak." Izuku stared dumbfounded at the spot he had just hit. His opponent had taken no damage. But before he had a chance to theorize why, Muscular punched the boy. Izuku shot both his hands up to block, the impact sending him flying against the rocks behind him. "Blood. Heck yeah, now we're talking." Muscular smiled as he rushed at Izuku again. Feeling sluggish after tanking that last hit, Izuku barely managed to get out of the way of the newest punch, but once he did, he found himself the victim of a flurry of attacks. He did his best to block, taking substantial damage to his arms, but after 2 initial attacks, he managed to dodge the rest, even getting a chance to strike back. Jumping into the air, he fell down with a mighty punch, but even armed with 10% of one for all, his opponent seemed unfazed. "Gotta say, you're much better at dodging than you are punching," Muscular announced, using the opportunity to swat Deku away. The green-haired boy crashed into the rocks. By this point, his costume had been torn to shreds and smudged with blood. "Deku!" A familiar voice screamed from just above him. "Oh, we have company," Muscular commented, his grin only becoming larger. His head dizzy, the boy tried to take a step, tumbling forward. He would have fallen to the ground had Uraraka not been there to catch him. "Are you alright, Deku?" Concern invaded her voice. "Somehow, you're always there to catch me when I fall." He sounded delirious, increasing the worry in his classmates. They had heard his battle cry earlier and, being alone in a moment of crisis, decided to approach their ally. "You get him to safety. I'll deal with the villain," Zero commented. "Too dangerous!" Deku shouted, trying to take a step forward, but again, he didn't have enough strength to support himself. "Your leg, your arms, you're hurt. Try not to move," Uraraka said as she set the boy down. "Are you just going to stand around and chit-chat, or are we doing this?" Muscular asked. Zero used his tape, ensnaring the villain's arm and trying to slam him against the wall. The villain jerked the tape in the opposite direction, sending Zero flying towards him while preparing his fist. The tape-swaying hero shot out another line, readjusting his trajectory. The villain barely missed his face as he smashed his helmet apart. Landing on the ground, Zero changed tactics, shooting his tape at the villain's feet, trying to at the very least lock him in place. It did little to faze the villain. Building up more muscle mass, he punched the ground, destabilizing the environment. He took a step forward, breaking through the tape and approaching Zero. Struggling to keep his footing, Zero didn't have time to evade the villain's fist. He was hit point blank in the chest, blood spludging from his mouth as the boy was sent flying to the rocks behind. His body fell unconscious to the ground moments later. Before Muscular could direct his attention back at the green-haired boy, he found the bubbly girl jumping at him, a serious expression on her face as she readied to attack. The villain punched at her, but before the hit could connect, she put her hands together, flying above the punch. She landed behind the muscled brute, rushing at him with her hand stretched out. If she could touch him, if he couldn't stand on the ground, there was no way he could fight. But the villain was faster than the girl, grabbing onto her arm before she could touch him. A fearful look spread through her face for only a second as Muscular lifted her into the air, smashing the gravity shifter into the ground. With the boy's classmates taken care of, the villain turned his attention back to the successor of One for All. "Gotta say, kid, you put up a much better fight. But it's time to end this." Filled with rage, the boy stood back up, ignoring the burning pain through his body. He rushed at the villain, his fists ready to strike. The villain responded in kind, but before their fists could clash, Izuku ducked below. Increasing his output to 100%, he struck the man in the stomach. "Detroit Smash!" He screamed as the muscled brute was sent flying into the rocks behind him. His arm and costume torn to shreds, Izuku turned to his classmates, wanting to make sure they were alright. "Not bad, kid." Muscular stepped out of the cloud of dust, drawing Midoriya's attention back to him. "Get back!" Midoriya shouted with all of his might. "Not a chance! It's time for all of you to die now!" Muscular shouted, assembling as much muscle mass as he could for a final strike. Izuku couldn't feel the fatigue in his body, or the pain in his bones, or the aching of his muscles. The adrenaline within him was the only thing keeping him going, the desire to keep his friends safe fueling him. But he stood tall as Muscular approached. "I'll protect them. I have to protect them," Izuku thought to himself. That was the only desire left in him, shouting, "I'll keep them safe!" As he regulated the power within him, a huge cloud burst from within him, blocking the villain's view. Muscular punched down at where the boy had been moments ago, but hit nothing but the clouds Izuku had created. Seconds later, Izuku appeared from behind him, catching the villains completely off guard. The young hero smashed him against the wall with a full-powered kick. For a second, the smoke screen cleared, but just as quick as it disappeared, the clouds were replaced. Muscular got back up, trying to survey his surroundings, but he couldn't tell anything apart through the thick mist. Where'd the kid go? He thought to himself as he analyzed the area carefully. The villain spotted movement, so he rushed to the spot, but again found himself hitting nothing but air. One for all, full power, smash! Izuku shouted, approaching the villain, striking him in the head with as much power as he could muster. Even more than that, he went beyond. The villain was sent flying to the wall, smashing it apart when he landed. Izuku couldn't stand as he fell back to the ground. He had sacrificed every appendage except one. Lucky for the boy, a weightless sensation spread through his body as his fall stopped. Struggling to stay conscious, the young gravity shifter had reached out to him, rendering him weightless. Oh, always catching me. The young boy fell unconscious before finishing his sentence. The heroes had struggled, they had sacrificed, but at the very least, they had defeated the villain. Not too far away from where Muscular was defeated, Superboy and Miss Martian were quite busy when the whole mess started. Struggling against a myriad of opponents, they were doing their best to get an attack in while avoiding their opponents' traps. With both students having to evade spiderweb bombs, bear trap-like devices, and balls that targeted them, the students didn't have time to worry about the falling marbles. That is, until they decompressed. Seeing the bombs appear out of nowhere, Jon rushed to get in between it and Megan, barely reaching the right spot to protect her from the explosion. Small explosions like that repeated around them, but one of the marbles had more than an explosive. When it decompressed, it revealed a humanoid creature with an exposed brain and black skin. It was a Nomu. The creature didn't seem to have any special augmentations to its body, but it seemed sturdy in its stead. Is this part of the test? A ninja-looking boy asked, his voice trembling in fear as he stepped back. Seeing targets before it, the creature stepped forward, intent on following its orders to wreak havoc. The students, who had been confident in their fighting abilities moments ago, found themselves unable to move their legs. They knew what a Nomu meant. They heard the troubles they had caused. Even All Might struggled against them. What good was a normal student against a Nomu? The creature wound up for a punch, preparing to strike down the student in front of him. Quickly recovering from the explosion, only to spot the students about to be killed by the monster, Jon rushed at the bioengineered human, kicking the beast to the side. It moved slightly, but the attack didn't seem to do much. White arms sprouted from the spot Jon had kicked, grabbing onto his leg and twisting it as they tossed the Kryptonian to the side. The creature then mustered its strength and tried to slam another student into the ground, but Jon once again got in the way. A little help here, the boy grunted as he held back the incredible strength of the blow. Someone? Megan! Slowly recovering from the fire of the explosion, the Martian-looking girl got back up. She mustered her strength and unleashed it at the creature, pushing it away. Having a moment to regroup, Jon turned to his fellow students. They may not have been in the same school, but they were in this situation together. What are you all standing around for? Jon screamed at the students, with them looking back at him wide-eyed. Look, if you're not gonna fight, then at least run away. We need to avoid injuries as much as possible. As the Nomu stood back up, the students kept staring at Jon. They could only see his back, but it reminded them of the beacon of hope himself. Go! He shouted as he rushed at the black-skinned creature. The Kryptonian jumped into the air, landing on the Nomu's back and holding onto it, trying to choke the bioengineered human. Arms sprouted from the creature's skin, trying to grab hold of the American boy. But using his heat vision, the young Kryptonian chopped them off. The tactic seemed efficient at first, but after a moment, Jon found the creature he stood on, shooting his heat vision back at him. Megan, get them out of here! Superboy shouted, jumping back, getting distance from his opponent. To his surprise, a spiderweb sprouted from beneath the bioengineered human, ensnaring the creature. The Nomu tried creating more arms to break itself free, but found itself hit by extending fingers of one of the other students. Jon looked back at his comrades, surprised to see them acting. Bear trap-like contraptions attacked the creature as a myriad of rocks flew in its direction, hitting the bioengineered human in the brain. With enough openings available, Jon rushed in. At first, he tried to strike the beast with simple punches, but seeing as that didn't work, he switched to his heat vision, focusing it on the head of the bioengineered creature. The monster struggled to free itself from the webs, but the constant onslaught of attacks by the students around him made it rather hard to do so. Its regeneration could only handle so much, so after a while of the onslaught, the stamina ran out, and the creature fell down defeated. Did we actually do it? Itejiro wondered, his voice sounding astounded. A creature that all might struggle with, and a lot of them had taken it down without any casualties. As a quick celebration broke out amongst the students, Jon caught everyone's attention. We can't let this small victory distract us. This was only one opponent. There have to be many more like him around. We're still in the battlefield. We should move, find other students, maybe even call for help. Some of the students seemed unconvinced. They had barely managed to best this creature, even with the son of the Beacon of Hope on their side. Why did he think they could help anyone else? Well said, Itejiro shouted. We should split up into 2 groups and search for the other students. They could all use our help. Now Before the Ketsubutsu student could finish his speech, a long piece of metal appeared from behind the rocks, piercing him through the stomach. The students looked at him in shock as blood flowed out of his belly. Fear spread through the group as the perpetrator of the actions appeared. A man wearing a black straitjacket lifted himself from behind the rocks, his metal teeth suspending him in the air. The students got into fighting positions. Jon was the first to charge in, expecting the fear to overwhelm his companions, but to his surprise, inspired by him, they attacked as well. Back on the bridge, the recently freed students watched in horror as their jailer crumbled to dust. Shigaraki seemed to have a very pleased expression on his face as the boy's ashes vanished in the wind. He then turned to the other students, focusing on one particular target. Katsuki Bakugo, I want to talk to you, his raspy voice let out. The atomic blonde's face turned to one of determination. What do you want, Hansi? Nothing really. Just have a proposition. I'd much rather give in private if you don't mind. Shigaraki narrowed his gaze as it moved towards the students behind the explosion lord. The student's face twisted in fear, with only Kaminari and Kirishima remaining calm. They had fought villains before. If you have something to say, just spit it out, Bakugo shouted. Shigaraki shrugged. I'll cut right down to the chase then. Why don't you join the league? Bakugo smiled at the proposition. The handyman seemed to take this as a good sign, but his assumption was proven incorrect when the explosive blonde rushed at him, unleashing an explosion at the villain. Shiggy managed to dodge in time, but the speed of the attack meant he didn't make it out unscathed. The hand on his face had been knocked away. I see it will take some more convincing. Shigaraki carefully picked up the hand and placed it back over his face. Not to worry. That is why we're here after all. He then rushed at the students, causing most of them to run away, while Kirishima, Kaminari, and Bakugo prepared to fight him. Where the cityscape met the mountainous terrain, Damien struggled to fight the chainsaw Nomu. He jumped back, throwing 3 batterings at the creature while it charged towards him. 2 of the projectiles bounced off of the monster's blue skin, while the third blew up in its face. It didn't take the creature down, but the explosion at least let Damien get some distance from the beast. My katana's destroyed and my gas attacks won't work, but explosives can stun him, the boy noted. Too bad I'm running low on those. His quirk was limited to 150 objects he could mark to summon. He'd usually allocate most of that space to reusable items, with only 10 or so being explosive batarangs. At this point, he had 2 left. I can't exactly waste them, Damien thought as the blue-skinned creature approached. It was faster than him, so without buildings to maneuver on, he was likely to be killed. Damien ran towards the mountain, but found his path obstructed by the destroyed terrain. The Nomu grew ever closer as Damien threw another battering at it, the explosion stunning the creature as Damien started running towards the destroyed terrain. But the monster only seemed to gain at him as he moved through the difficult terrain. He prepared his last-ditch effort at survival, but before he had a chance to use it, a web-like contraption sprung from the ground, ensnaring the Nomu. Need some help? Jon's rhetorical question reached the assassin's ears, bringing a sense of relief to the boy. The peace wasn't long-lived, as the Nomu quickly cut through its restraints. Damien threw his weapon, with the explosion stunning the creature long enough for Megan to restrain it with her telepathy. Taking it down after that was trivial. With the combined quirks of the students, the creature posed little trouble, especially with the right coordination. You got yourself in a lot of trouble, Superboy noted. The consequences of being a hero, Damien replied. I could say the same thing about you. So, what's our next step? The Spider Boy asked Jon. The Kryptonian looked at Damien for guidance. First, we need surveillance. Damien turned to his green-skinned classmate. She quickly flew into the air, surveying the area and relaying the situation to her classmates through her telepathy. The battlefield was vast. Up ahead, she could spot Bakugo's explosions. She couldn't get too close of a look, but knew he was struggling. To the west, she saw that a group of heroes led by Gang Orca had entered the fray. They were fighting against Shigaraki, or at least, that's what it looked like to the redhead. What caught her attention most of all was the pink cloud to the southeast and the massive amount of ice to the northeast. Fights were going on all around them. Adding Bakugo to our ranks can prove valuable, but we should focus on the situation at hand. We'll go to the dust cloud and take down its origin. We will probably be able to add larger amount of troops to our forces that way. Then we'll move them along to Todoroki's position and spread out from there. Damien strategized. Wait. If the heroes are here too, we should focus on getting to them. One of the students in the group argued. No, they have their hands full at the moment. We can't burden them more. Instead, we're focusing on assembling the students as we move, easing their burden. You all wanted to prove yourselves worthy of being heroes. Here's your chance to be one. Damien turned his attention to his super companion, finding the boy raising his hand. Jon? If getting Bakugo will be beneficial, why don't I go get him? The young assassin fell silent for a moment. Very well. Get Bakugo and meet us in Todoroki's position. Jon made a quick sign showing he understood. He then turned to Megan as she landed, an idea in his head. Are you sure? She asked, reading his mind. The boy nodded. Kaminari shot another disc at Shigaraki. The handyman barely had time to dodge it with Kirishima coming at him. Jumping back, the Heir of Darkness wanted to switch to the offensive, but was forced back by Bakugo's explosions. He engaged with the man in dire need of chapstick, throwing 3 explosions before jumping back. Using the smokescreen Bakugo had inadvertently created, Shigaraki launched his offensive, rushing at Kirishima. The sinister boy was inches away from planting his hand on the sturdy hero when an unexpected projectile hit him in the face. Shigaraki was sent tumbling across the bridge before hitting the side railing. Looks like I made it just in time, Jon joked after landing. Miss Martian catapulting him like that was a gamble, but it seemed to have paid off. Honestly, how are we getting ourselves into so much trouble today? If it isn't the super brats, the handyman growled as he slowly got back up. We didn't need your help, Laser Eyes. Oh, you want me to leave? As long as he's here, he can always lend us a hand, the sparky blonde interjected. Fine by me, Bakugo replied with all the students on the bridge focusing their attention on their opponent. Shigaraki rushed at Kaminari, wanting to take out the electricity user. His path was blocked by Jon's heat vision that threatened to burn the villain's head off. Hiding behind Kirishima, Shigaraki changed his line of attack, rushing at the Kryptonian. He couldn't get too close to any of the students or they'd attack him, but at the same time, he needed to avoid Jon's line of sight. "Fighting Kryptonians is really annoying," Shigaraki commented as he got close. "Good thing I brought this." Spotting the small blue container Shigaraki had pulled out, Baku rushed to the light blue-haired villain, knocking what he assumed to be a weapon out of his hands with an explosion. The small lead container flew through the air, opening up when it made contact with the ground. A small green shard fell out of it, bouncing around before landing at Jon's feet. "That's your big plan? A rock?" Bakugo rushed at Shigaraki, unleashing an explosion that the villain easily evaded. "You clearly aren't a Superman fan." Shigaraki laughed, spotting Jon's face turning green as he fell to the ground, all his strength leaving his body. Kirishima tried to assist his classmate, but found Shigaraki moving to cover the boy, blocking his path. Angered by the development, Bakugo tried to attack Shigaraki again. Had his gauntlet still been intact, the villain would be a goner. Luckily, he'd already gotten rid of those long ago. Down below the bridge, the students didn't fare much better. They had tried to move the Shark Man, but no matter how much they struggled, they could only move him a few inches at a time. He was too hurt and too heavy to move efficiently, so all they could do was guard their comrade and hope that the explosions above weren't anything too serious. Without them realizing it, a man in a yellow trench coat approached from the shadows. Shigaraki was blocking his three enemies from getting close to their Kryptonian comrade, but they were also blocking him from finishing the Super Brat off. Baku approached Shigaraki with an explosion. Holding back, Shigaraki jumped out of the way, kicking the bombastic blonde away. Gaminari came at him next, shooting another disc at the villain. When Kirishima distracted him, the disc made contact, so Chargeball unleashed his attack, a stream of electricity flying at the villain, fully engulfing him. The handyman screamed in pain as he reached towards the blonde's target, turning it to dust. "You brat!" he screamed, rushing at Gaminari. He didn't let anything get in his way. Bakugo tried to use an explosion to block him, but couldn't. He was about to touch Kaminari when Kirishima jumped in his way, using his hardened body as a shield. It was done out of pure instinct, so once Shigaraki made contact with his skin, the red hair began to panic, but was unable to do anything to stop Shigaraki from killing him. Red Riot closed his eyes and waited for his doom to come, but it didn't. Instinctively, Shigaraki turned around to spot Class 1A's homeroom teacher panting, his eyes fixed on the decay boy. "Eraser, how annoying." Shigaraki started scratching himself frantically, but calmed down halfway through. Seeing what had happened, Kirishima struck the villain in the stomach, forcing him back. A bit of blood came out along with saliva as he reeled from the punch. "Time to retreat," Shigaraki admitted to himself, placing his hand on the ground as Bakugo rushed in for another attack. Inevitably, Aizawa blinked, so the bridge below the students collapsed, consuming Shigaraki and Bakugo. "Ah, Shigaraki, there you are," a man wearing a strange mask and yellow trench coat said as the villain landed beside him. "Shouldn't you be heading back to the rendezvous point?" "Which one are you?" Shigaraki asked, narrowing his eyes as he looked at Baku as he struggled to get up. "Why, I'm the original one, of course," the compressed clone replied. "How many did you get?" Shigaraki pointed at the struggling blonde, indicating for Compressed to do his thing. The grandson of Oji Harima obliged. "Counting this one, about 11. "Let's get going then," Shigaraki said, taking hold of all of the marbles the clone had collected, and heading towards the center of the facility. The time frame of the attack having elapsed, the villains who were still conscious quickly made their way towards the center of the facility. Some were too busy engaging with the heroes, making them unable to reconvene. Once he got there, Shigaraki spotted another version of Compressed, Dabi, Toga, Magna, Spinner, twice, along with a few other recruits who were already there. "Let's get on with this," Shigaraki ordered, so one of the compresses turned their allies into marbles. He then mounted on top of the transformed Zuran R as the creature flew away. Havoc wreaked, students killed, and many more kidnapped. This was not a blow the heroes would soon recover from.